Everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Excited to be here. Really excited for today's topic, brain health, mind, memory, and meaning. This is something that, as a healthcare provider, well, one, I'm interested in myself, but also I get a lot of people who have questions about brain health, their memory and things like that. So we're going to jump into today's conversation and go over brain health. How can we sustain it, maintain it, and optimize it? All righty. Um, so I am a family nurse practitioner. I work in family medicine and emergency medicine, 25 plus years, but who's counting? I love every bit of it. And for those of you who are local to the Los Angeles area, I might be a familiar face. I'm an NBC medical contributor, but I've done some national things too, all in the spirit of health and wellness topics. My mantra is I like to talk to people before they become my patients. And I also do have a podcast and a website called AskNurseAlice.com. And today our conversation is going to be focused on brain health because it's more than memory. It's about staying as independent, confident, and connected as possible. Now, I will say, as I'm presenting, if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat box. Allow some forgiveness in case I don't see it right away because I might be focused on the presentation. But nevertheless, I try to save some time at the end to answer as many questions as possible. All right. So why brain health matters? Well, the brain health literally touches every part of our daily lives. It affects our memory, our decision making, our mood, our balance, communication, and independence. And even things like managing your finances, remembering appointments, driving safely, participating in conversations, all of those rely on healthy brain function. And this isn't just an individual issue, it affects your families, it affects your communities as well. And in fact, there are millions of Americans, 7.2 million specifically, who are living with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of cognitive decline. And I know that's something that can be of concern for many people. And we're going to, as we go into the conversation, we'll talk about what happens with our memory, what happens with our brain as we age, what are normal signs of aging, and what are some things that we may need to be more concerned about. So we're going to get into all of these things here. So what happens to our brain as we age? Now, I'm not going to go over the necessarily in detail the physiological things that happen, but as we talk about the brain and memory and those things like that, here's some things that happen, right? Some normal aging things that happen. So if any of you have experienced these things, and feel, want to share in the chat box, chat, that's fine as well. But as we age, if you think of our brain like, let's compare it to a muscle. There will be some, as we age, some what we call atrophy, but normal atrophy for the aging process. So things get a little bit smaller, right? And that's fine. That nothing, just because we age and our brain gets a little bit smaller, doesn't mean that we're going to develop dementia, that we're going to develop mild cognitive impairments or things like that. But we might be a little more delayed with remembering some things, right? So normal aging things. So this has happened to me. Occasionally we'll forget someone's name, right? You're like, what's his name? What's his name? I can't think of it. And if it, and that's something that's normal. We might have slower word recall, or we might misplace items from time to time. I've done that. I've sat my keys down somewhere, can't remember where I put them, or my purse. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to learn new things. When I was in high school or early college, I could read something, hear something, and boom, I know it. It's ingrained in my mind. But now it'll take me a little bit longer. Maybe I got to read something twice or three times for it to really stick. Those type of things. And I might need some reminders. Well, that can be part of normal aging, where things will begin to become a little bit more of a concern is when these things start to negatively impact your life. So maybe you're repeatedly getting confused about times or places, and not just once or twice, but like just repeatedly happening. Maybe if I stick to the key scenario, okay, I sat my keys down, can't remember where they were. But let's say, usually I'm able to eventually find them, right? I'm able to recall it. But if I set my keys down and I can't find them, then I find them in somewhere like the refrigerator. That's a different picture, right? So, and then sometimes there's significant personality changes that can happen. Maybe you're getting lost in familiar locations. Like you've gone somewhere, I go to, me and my family go to this place we've gone this place every year for the last 20 years. But then as we move forward, you're getting a little more forgetful about like, wait a minute, I don't recall this. Those could be some things to just be a little more concerned about. Or when you're having safety concerns at home. Now, I've walked out the house and thought, did I unplug the iron? I've definitely done that a time or two, but um, when we can get concerned about things like that, and maybe you didn't unplug it, or maybe you left the stove on. And these are things that are happening more frequently. So those are some things about things that can happen in the brain as we age that might be a little bit more concerning. And now I'm going into a presentation. I don't want anyone to walk away from here like, oh my gosh, I have Alzheimer's. Please, this is just information to equip you with some things to talk to your healthcare provider about. If you have some concerns, talk to them more, because there's a series and a battery of tests that would need to be done to, further assess if there really is indeed something else going on with the brain. And we'll get into what some of those things are. So, but here's the good news. The good news about our brain health is that you actually have more power than what you think you do. So, lifestyle choices are actually so important when it comes to our brain health. And interestingly enough, the things that you do to stay heart healthy are actually many of the same things that can help keep your brain healthy. And so, the things that we do to stay heart healthy, like, well, you exercise, eat healthier foods, avoid smoking, nicotine, those type of things, because some of those not there are some things that if there's something that can decrease or impede blood flow or cause inflammation, we know that's bad for our heart. We think of, we talk a lot about heart attacks. We can if people focus on heart disease, but because of the blood vessels there, we have very tiny blood vessels that feed the brain. And so if we can keep our heart and our other blood vessels happy, we'll keep our brain vessels happy in our head. And so we want to stay moving. Nutrition plays an important role. Getting enough sleep does. Stress management. And so you're going to say like, oh, Nurse Alice, like, okay, I've heard that, but we're going to get into the whys of it because I have some some pictures here that will kind of illustrate some of the importance of this. And we'll get into more of the weeds of these things. But I wanted to say it's never too late to make some changes. So you're like, you know what? I'm already this age. I'm doing fine. Well, you may be feeling fine, but two of the things that most people ask me about when they come to see me in the clinic or in the emergency rooms, the biggest concerns are mobility and their memory. So there are some things I know that we maybe take a little bit for granted. And I'm saying because I've done it too. Because although I'm a provider, I'm a patient too. There's some things that are like, oh, that's not really going to make a big difference. But those small changes day after day, weeks after week, months after months actually make a significant difference. So it's never too late to begin. So let's get into this. So I know it looks like am I in human anatomy class? A little bit for a brief moment you will be with me. And so we're going to talk about brain, blood flow, and cognitive health. So I have some things here on the slide. What I want to really do is focus on this picture to the side because this is where it kind of makes sense, right? We talk about exercise and how important that is. Every time the heart pumps, there will be blood flow. If you can see at the very bottom, this little can you guys see my arrow? Where my arrow is? Okay, so that is the aorta. Every time our heart pumps, blood goes out through the aorta to the rest of the body, right? We think of kidneys, we think of the liver, we think of down to our toes and things like that. But now let's focus on the neck and head. So every time the heart pumps, it goes up into these vessels here that feed up into the brain. Oh, I'm echoing. Feed up to the brain. And so our brain needs adequate blood flow. Now, how much blood flow are we talking about, Alice? Well, it needs a lot of blood flow because there's actually four main vessels. You can kind of see them here in this top picture, two in the front and two in the back. Every time the heart pumps, blood flows goes up into the neck and to the front of the brain, to the back of the brain. Now, look at all this vasculature. It's like a hairnet. Literally, your brain needs blood flow. When there's a lack of blood flow to these respective parts of the brain, that's when the brain it gets a lack of oxygen, which we call ischemia, and that ischemia can actually turn into irreversible brain damage. The brain starts to shrink. It's like, oh, there's not enough good blood flow here. I must not be needed. starts to shrink a little bit. And so those things are very important because we're seeing the outer part of the brain, but there are actually deep structures in the brain. And I have another picture. We're going to go into those. We have certain structures in our brain that are very responsible for memory, very responsible. They need good blood flow. How do I get good blood flow? Well, we got blood flow going there now as we're sitting and talking. But if I exercise, if I go for a walk, it's going to be more robust blood flow to the brain. The brain likes that. That's how you keep the brain with having good blood flow. But also, what kind of blood are we talking about, Alice? Well, I'm talking about the blood that has a well-managed blood sugar, that has, as minimum, not too much cholesterol floating around there because it's like the quality of gas, right? Now, I don't know about you, but I do get the lowest, I do get unleaded. I don't get, but if we think about our body, right? If you could pick whether I'm going to put unleaded or premium in my brain, you'd want premium. Well, how do you get that premium gas? Well, there are some things that we're going to do. We're going to talk about nutrition, right? And how we need vital nutrients in our blood, and we need the best premium blood that we can. So managing blood sugar, cholesterol, those type of things. And then also, you see how the blood's going through those passageways, right? Those vessels. We got to keep those nice and open and patent. We don't want them small. We want them as large as possible there. Well, how do I do that? Well, we want to minimize inflammation. We want to manage our blood pressure. With blood pressure, blood vessels get smaller. So it happens when they do your arm, it's going to happen here too, right? If there's narrowing, it's happening in multiple places. It's not just to your arms. It could be to your brain, it could be to your kidney and all those type of things. But we're going to focus on brain. So we want to manage good blood pressure because we want nice patent blood vessels. We want a good, happy quality of blood that's going to the brain, and we need to make sure that there's an adequate amount that's going. And so with our lifestyle, we can actually help to manage this and optimize this. This is going to be extremely important. So here is an example. Here's a picture. So I can't see the chat box, but you guys can participate in the chat box. I'd like to know here. When we see this, like, okay, we're gonna say this is the person who doesn't exercise, who's just, I'm just doing what I need to do day by day. Maybe I'm sitting for long periods of time. We can visually see what's happening to the muscles, right? Now, if this is someone who exercises and trains, okay, well, I see a little bit of, I see some muscles there, I see some six packs. So these muscles here on this side are probably stronger, right? They're probably in a better condition than this other side. Now I'm going to go up to the brain. Now, this is not to say if you don't exercise, you're going to develop Alzheimer's. I just needed a picture of a brain. But here on the right side is a picture of a healthy brain. You guys see that? So all of this white part here, that's brain tissue. So you can see like there's little minimal spaces between the grooves, right? So the muscle, the brain is nice and robust, nice size, right? You see these little horns here in the middle? Those are your ventricles. That stores cerebral spinal fluid. It's nice size, good, right? Healthy brain, so good blood flow. It's maintaining its size. And then these, I'm going to circle them, put my arrows around them here on the left and the right. These are called the hippocampi. That's the memory capital of your brain. Long-term memory, those things, I need a healthy hippocampi here. Now, when I don't have good blood flow or the quality of the blood that's going up to my brain doesn't have a lot of oxygen because I'm smoking, it has lots of glucose in it because my sugars aren't managed, or cholesterol in there because my cholesterols are off the chart. That can impact the quality of it, right? And so you can see here, this brain tissue is actually smaller. We can see larger space between the grooves of the brain. So the brain has not gotten the most optimal amount of blood flow or perhaps the quality of blood to the brain. And so the brain tissue shrinks. And as the brain tissue shrinks, these ventricles that hold fluid, they expand because they're trying to maintain equilibrium in the space in the brain. Now, remember I talked about those memory capitals in your brain? These hippocampi here, look at the hippocampi here. They've shrunken. So just imagine that you got a storage room and you're trying to put stuff in the storage. So with your memories, I'm trying to develop new memories with every day, every experience. If these are small, it's like the storage space is full. It's going to be harder for me to store memory in here. And it might even be a little more challenging for me to recall some things. So you can see here what can happen to the brain. Now, this particular brain has Alzheimer's. Now, there are other forms of dementia and other things too, but you can see, I chose this to visually show what can happen to the brain when it's going down that pathway of mild cognitive impairment, dementias, and Alzheimer's. Now, there's a variety of different conditions, but this is just one example. But you can see a healthy brain. This is someone who's exercising, eating well, doing all the things that we're going to talk about, compared to someone who maybe didn't do that. And there are other things that can exacerbate this, but I needed you to see it because we don't look at the brain often. We look at muscles, like the arms, like I like the biceps and stuff like that. But it's important that we look at how can we keep our brain healthy. Think of it as a muscle as well. So now, in the brain, there's it's comprised of gray matter and white matter, but I'm going to talk about the white matter here. So if anyone's done an MRI, you might see in the report where they reference white matter in the brain. This is kind of like the network of how the signals and everything communicates and messages get distributed. And it's really important because the white matter in our brain actually changes as we age. Now, there's some things we just can't fight Father Time. We just can't do it. I know. But we can delay some of those things from happening or minimizing them, like I said, by with the activities that we kind of touched upon. But it's important that I bring this up because this is linked to aging and vascular changes. Again, can't change the aging, but vascular changes, you can impact that with your diet, exercises, and managing your blood sugar and blood pressure. Um, these are the things that can exacerbate the changes to that white matter. The white matter, again, that's a network. How does a signal, what happens when the internet's down? The network's down. Nothing, no, can't answer email, can't do anything, right? So if the white matter changes, it can lead to some potential cognitive function issues, how quickly we can process information, our balance, it can impact our cognitive function, and it can put us at risk for cognitive impairment. And so I just wanted to mention this in case someone's ever had an MRI. You can go back and look to see what's mentioned on your report there. Um, but I want to focus really on what can we do? What can we do to protect your brain? And as I mentioned before, physical activities is one of the most researched and powerful tools when it comes to brain health. We talk about our heart a lot, but it's really important for brain, better blood flow to the brain, more pumps, more blood to the brain, right? It improves your mood. Exercise actually releases like dopamine and all those things, so you'll also feel a lot better. Um, regular movement can also regulate your body's natural sleep rhythms. It can help with enhancing memory, keep the hippocampi nice and robust inside so they're not shrinking. Better balance. There are structures in the brain. The cerebellum is responsible for balance. So making sure that that structure stays nice and robust as well can help reduce fall risks and support some of the physical independence. And then stress reduction. So when you exercise, it actually lowers the amount of cortisol that's released, which can be harmful to the brain over time. Cortisol, the stress hormone, we'll get into it, can actually exacerbate the shrinkage of the brain. It causes inflammation, and that over time, chronically, can actually contribute to shrinking of the brain. So, when we talk about stress, oh, manage stress, you're like, stress, Alice, how am I going to manage stress? Like, and you kind of put it to the side, like, it's not going to happen. Well, now that we know, and I don't know if any of this is new, but if it is new, then let's now be aware that chronic high stress levels releases cortisol, and that can actually contribute to shrinkage of the brain, which can in fact impact some of those things that we were just talking about.
Hey, Nurse Alice,
Yes.
I know you were just on a slide talking about things that you can do exercise wise, but someone did put in the chat that their physical therapist said drinking water is essential and feeds the brain. And she asked, do you
Absolutely.
agree? Okay.
I agree. We actually have a slide on that. Thank you. Next time you should co-present with me. Awesome. No, I love it. No, that's actually water is extremely important. So I'm so glad. So then it doesn't like what Alice said. Well, there's the other people in the audience who know too. So exercise. Again, exercise. How much exercise do I need to do, Nurse Alice? 150 minutes per week would be ideal. Now, I know there are some people might have some limitations when it comes to like joints, knees, and backs and things like that. So we find an exercise that works for you. Perhaps it's more of a stationary bike versus biking outside. Maybe it's just walking. Maybe it's in the water, doing water aerobics. Maybe it's Pilates. It's something like that. But let's find an activity that gets the heart rate up and moving. Strength training is also extremely important. Cardio is good, but we got to lift some heavy things. We do. that, I mean, there's some other benefits to that, but lifting heavy, strength training, even if you do resistance bands, that's helpful. And if you're like, you know what, I can't find the time of the day, well, let's break it up. For 30 minutes, let's do 10 in the morning, 10 after, so 10 after breakfast, 10 after lunch, 10 after dinner. And actually, that's the best time to walk because it's going to actually help improve digestion. But let's start where you are and let's get moving. Now, let's talk about some nutrition. So we talked about, remember I talked about the quality of the blood that we have there? Well, it's very important that we nourish our bodies. Again, what we do to keep our brain healthy, what we do to keep our heart healthy, will keep our brain healthy and vice versa. So it's a twofer. I don't know about you, but I love a good twofer. So what kind of foods fuel the brain? And some of you might, and you've probably seen online, you'll hear like a brain diet or an anti-inflammatory brain diet. So those are basically foods that are going to help minimize inflammation into the brain. Remember I said cortisol increases inflammation. So we want to be anti-inflammation. So what are some foods that you can eat? Here's some great ideas. Leafy greens and berries. One of my personal hacks, every morning I have some cottage cheese, which is a good source of protein and calcium. But also I throw in some blueberries and I throw in some strawberries. Small serving, doesn't need to be a major change or anything, but it's something that I take every day. And I didn't like it at first. I'm gonna tell you, I didn't like it, but I did it because I'm like, I need to train my taste buds to like this and eat it. And so now, especially because I know what it's doing in the brain. Well, I've been known that, but I like many people took it for granted. And then as we age, you're like, wait a minute, I think I might need to go ahead and get really serious about this. So leafy green vegetables and berries. We got some nuts, olive oils, and beans. Definitely can help with cognitive function and vascular health. Salmon, those the healthy fats. So salmon and sardines help you with those omega 3s. And if you're like, oh, I don't really like fish oils, okay, well, that's when the kind of the fish oil supplements can be helpful as too. And then whole grains. Those definitely can help keep your blood pressure or your blood sugar and your cholesterol's kind of pretty even. Also, it can help manage those things too. So these are some foods that you want to fuel your brain with. Now, these are the foods that will work against your brain. So these are probably some of the foods that you want to steer a little bit more clear from. And these are really your highly processed foods, the excess sugar, fried foods, heavy alcohol. Those type of things can increase inflammation and cause vascular damage over time. But rather than focusing on the restrictions, I want to encourage you to maybe revisit the previous slide and think, what can I add? What can I add to my plate versus like, oh, I can't have this, I can't have that, because that makes it a little more challenging to adopt this change. Now, I'm going to say this, making food changes, it can be a little challenging at first because your taste buds are accustomed to something, but you can do it because you're already eating something. It's just a minor pivot of some things here. Now, I will like use example fried foods. I love a good fried chicken. You know, I'm never going to give a fried chicken, but what I will do is I might throw in a baked piece and a fried piece, right? So there's some things that you can do. We're not asking for perfection, but maybe some progress because this will help you in the long run. I'm not opposed to having an adult beverage and celebrating for someone's graduation or promotion at work or something like that. But just being mindful that excess alcohol can can help can shrink the brain volume over time. It actually can impair memory and cognitive function too. So these are some things like so when you're in the grocery store, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I always look at the labels and then I ask myself like, is this heart healthy? Is this brain healthy? I do. And sometimes I'm really close to put something in my car. I'm like, Allison, this is not brain healthy or heart healthy for you. Put this down. Because if it's in the house, you will eat it. So, that's the store time is really a pivotal time. That's where the decision starts in the store. If you don't bring it around, if it's not accessible to you, you can't eat it. So, anyways, these are some foods that you kind of want to work, steer clear from or minimize. Baby steps. Baby steps. Doesn't need to be perfection, but just progress. Hydration. So this is my person who mentioned hydration. Hydration is extremely important when it comes to the brain. Um, the brain doesn't well, let me say this. The brain doesn't have any storage for energy or water. So we need to keep hydrated because what happens when something gets dehydrated? We've seen it like dried apples, versus a real apple. What happens? It shrivels up. I want you to think of your that happening with your brain. Not literally and that quickly, of course, but over time, that actually makes a big difference. So even mild hydration can affect how your brain feels and functions. So when you're dehydrated, you're a little, maybe a little more cloudy. It's a little more difficult to concentrate. Recall isn't that great. You might even feel a little bit dizzy sometimes and cranky, right? You do. I'm going to say it for you because your wife or your husband won't tell you, but you get a little cranky. And so don't always rely on your thirst buds to tell you that you're thirsty. And sometimes this is just could be medications that can influence some of your thirst buds. I'll just say this, your thirst buds aren't always sensitive to when your body needs more fluid. Okay. The brain definitely needs fluid, uh, needs to stay hydrated. And I'm saying hydrated with water. Okay. This is not where Pepsi and I don't know, other drinks, what healthy drinks, water, if you have water with some electrolytes and things like that. But right when I'm talking about hydration, I'm really talking about water to really keep it nice and plump, if you will. I guess that's the best way to say it. But keep water within reach. So I don't know about y'all. I always keep water in reach. If I have it in reach with me, I'm more likely to drink it. Just like if I have coffee and donuts within reach, I'm probably more likely to reach out for those things. So having water with you, and I mean, I carry it with me. I'm going to it's like, oh, I'm just going to the store. You know with how that is. You go to the store for one thing, you end up there longer and multiple things. So have some water with you just in case, or keep a bottle of water close by or in your trunk or something like that, something that you can drink because that dehydrated brain, it happens to all of us once or twice. We feel better after we hydrate. But if this happens chronically over time, it can overall contribute to exacerbating a brain that's going to atrophy. Um, and how much
Hey,
water do you drink?
yep, yep. Go ahead, nurse. That was
Was
a
that
question
the question?
somebody asked in the chat.
Oh,
Yep.
so I'm gonna say you need at least eight glasses of water. You do. You do. And I will say this, there's a little bit of a trick to water drinking, I'll say. Now, if I drink all my water, if I drink all that water too quickly, it's just going to pee out. I'm going to pee it out. So actually space your water out. Space the water out because you want to give the water enough time to do its thing. But if you flood your body with water, it's going to go straight, it's going to hit your kidneys and your kidneys are going to like, oh, this is too much water at one time. Let's flush it out because it's trying to keep equilibrium. So I say this, say 8 glasses of water, but make sure you kind of space it out a little bit. Okay. And keep some water by you at night at when you go to bed too. So when you get up, water's there. When you go to bed, water's there for you. Now sleep. Sleep also definitely plays a very important role when it comes to your brain. Sleep, although we feel like it's downtime, this is, while you're at rest, your brain is actually still working hard. And what happens during your sleep is that when you don't get enough sleep, it can actually have a very profound effect on your cognitive health. So while you're sleeping, memories are processing and getting stored. So it's still working while you're asleep. So it consolidates all those experiences from the day and it converts them from short-term memories to long-term storage. It helps clear waste. This lymphatic system is what flushes out the toxins, including those proteins that are linked to Alzheimer's during your sleep. So let's see. I think I have another slide where we go into more detail. But there are certain proteins that are linked that are associated with Alzheimer's. Let me just say this, everybody makes the proteins that can contribute to Alzheimer's. What happens is that those proteins and waste gets flushed out. It's the accumulation of them that is then problematic and what can contribute and lead to Alzheimer's. So it's very important that you're getting enough water and that you're also getting adequate sleep because this will help clear the tox and it's called toxins because they're proteins that our brain makes, but when they build up, they become toxic, and that's what can contribute to the Alzheimer's. So sleep is very much very important to help setting, decreasing potential or offsetting it as much as possible, Alzheimer's. This is also a time to restore your cognitive function. I don't know about you, but when I've tried to, just, pound the pavement and just get through something and keep doing it, I actually kind of slow down. My thought process slow down. Physically, I slow down. The concentration, the clarity, the precision's not there. Your body needs rest. Your neurons, the things that are firing and moving signals along, they get tired too. So you actually need to rest. Okay. And then take that break, take a power nap, whatever you got to do, then come back at it fresher and sharper. I've definitely done that. So, how much sleep does everybody in the chat and on here get? How much, and I can't see it, Antoine, so you have to tell me how much sleep is everybody reporting that they get?
So the first one says 8, which is good. Yep, 8, 7, 6. Yep, between, well, somebody said 4 to 9 hours, depending, of course.
Depending. Okay.
Yep, but most folks are saying between 6 and 8 hours.
Okay, so between 6 and 8, at least get 6. 8 is better, but at least get 6. And now I've had those moments like, well, like for the person who said 4 to 9, it's kind of that range. Sometimes it's like, oh, I got to do it. I don't have a choice. L- And sometimes that's the case, but try to, as much as possible, let those be so minimal. We want to make sure, because even though it's like, oh, I'm going to catch up with my sleep later, there really is no such thing as catching up on sleep because what's happening in the body is happening to the body. You can't go back and rewrite it or reverse it, right? And mind you, if it's just like an outlier, like once or twice, not going to be a big issue. But what happens is when we do things like that periodically, they are easier to become habit forming. So at all, as much as possible, 7 to 8 would be best. And then the NIH actually says that adults sleeping less than 6 hours per night are at higher risk for dementia later on in life. Because when you don't get enough sleep, it actually can contribute. There's an association with increasing cortisol levels, causing inflammation. Then you're still having to work through the day and you're tired. It just adds more stress to the body. So that can lead to some of the vascular dementias that are out there. Now, sometimes we have problems going to sleep. Some people might have insomnia where they have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. Some people may have sleep apnea where they might, it disrupts some of their sleep. Or sometimes people frequently wake up during the night. And then some people might even have restless leg syndrome, where it's just like something's like bothering your leg all night. You're just moving and just can't get any sleep. And interestingly enough, restless sleep syndrome is actually starts from the brain. So one of the ways to fix this is actually to get more sleep. But if you're having any of these problems, definitely want you to talk to your provider about how can you best remedy these things because you need to get sleep for optimal brain health, right? One it's going to make you want to feel better, right? Because you don't feel good when you don't get enough sleep. You feel not as productive, not as energized. It actually can contribute to negative moods and you're just not the happiest when you're not getting enough sleep, right? Put your body under a lot of stress, and we want to minimize that because that stress, cortisol, and all those other things can help contribute again to it does not contribute to healthy brain activity. So stress, anxiety in the brain, definitely a connection with these things here. They can contribute to chronic stress. Remember I talked about chronic stress, that cortisol, it causes inflammation and then it shrinks the brain and it impairs the hippocampus, memory capital of the brain. We want to keep this as happy and robust as possible. So again, stress, anxiety can also impact your memory focus when we're highly stressed or anxious. That cortisol can also narrow our attention and it makes it difficult to concentrate. It can contribute to us just not being in a good mood. Chronic stress can increase the risk of even more anxiety and depression. That sometimes will lead to isolation, and those things can also contribute to cognitive decline over time. But it's really that inflammation. That inflammation is like toxic to your brain cells. Um, so again, like if you have a stressful night, that one night's not going to make the difference, but it's when it becomes pattern and it's chronic in nature that happens. So how can you manage your stress?
There's Alice. I'm sorry. I want to go back to the sleep thing because there was a question someone mentioned about having some challenges with deep sleep. So I
Okay.
just responded to them and just recommended they talk to their primary care physician, to kind of
Okay.
get some more things that they can do to kind of understand why. Yeah. But I wanted to see if there was anything else that you.
So deep sleep. So there are definitely stages to sleep. Deep sleep is actually the most optimal. That's when the most recovery and benefits can happen. It's sometimes it can be a challenge to get there or stay there, or especially if you're having any of these issues, it prevents you from getting there. And so the question was, how do I get to deep sleep? Was that the question?
Yeah, it was their phone monitors their sleep and it shows that they get very little deep sleep. What do I do about that?
Well, I also want to say that there's several things that can just impact our sleep. And I thought I had it on the slide somewhere. Oh, about how we can optimize our environment. Oh, it's a little bit later. How we can optimize our environments and things that we can do to
Mhm.
prepare for sleep. So obviously, before you're going to go to sleep, 1 hour before you're going to go to sleep, you need to dim the lights. I'm not saying you have to turn the lights off, but dim them. Don't go from bright light to, okay, nighttime, and then turn off the light switch. It's going to take a minute to adjust. So if you actually dim the lights, it will signal to your brain that, hey, it's getting dark, time for me to go to sleep. So dimming lights, being careful of what kind of food you're eating before you go to sleep. You don't want to eat anything that's caffeine, high in sugar, or real fatty foods before you go to sleep because your body has to work hard to digest that. So make it a little more challenging to go into deeper sleep. Um, Even though some people might take an alcoholic beverage because it feels like it relaxes them and puts them to sleep, it actually does the opposite and can disrupt your sleep. So there are kind of a few things that also that may prevent you from getting into that sleep. And also, um, well, I guess I'll say this because this can actually be a whole presentation of itself.
I know that's what yeah,
I love this question.
that's why I was
So
hesitating on it.
yeah, but no, but that those things, exercise, because if you make the body tired, it'll help you to go to sleep. You'll be so, I don't say not that I don't want to be exhausted. No one wants to be exhausted, but if you're exercising and expending energy, especially in a positive way, by the time it's time to go to sleep, you will go to sleep and you will go to sleep, deep sleep. But then also talk to your provider because it could be medication related if you're on medications. So a few things, but that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Okay. So so stress management, we kind of talked, so we're kind of talking about sleep, stress management, all these things. As much as possible, nature is actually very healing. The sunlight is very good, the vitamin D that we're getting from the sun, the fresh air. It's kind of like being one with nature. It's actually a very powerful stress reliever that can be helpful. I got to get back to it, but I was taking walks. Like after dinner, I would go for a walk. And then shortly thereafter, I would go to bed. So it actually made for some of the best sleep, by the way. Praying spirituality is definitely a way to, when you can focus on faith and meaningfulness, that can help with anchoring your emotions and managing stress. Deep breathing, meditation. Now, some people are like, Alice, meditation's a little weird for me. It's something you got to try. You just got to stick with it. I know it might seem foreign at first for some people, but even if you take a few minutes of meditation I would go to YouTube and I would play some meditation sounds like, oh, this doesn't work. This doesn't, I was a little skeptical myself, but then next thing I know, I wake up the next day and my YouTube video that was playing the song, it's done, but I don't even remember when it ended. So it had to work because it put me to sleep. Journaling can be helpful, and then also getting counseling and support. There's lots of things going on in the world today. Um, I I'm going to guess that many of us are going through one thing or another, and it's always helpful to kind of get that out. If you're kind of holding all of that stress in, sometimes it's better to release it, and releasing it in a safe, supportive manner is always helpful. So now I'm going to talk about hearing and brain health. I don't know if y'all are aware, but your hearing actually can impact your brain health. Let me know in the chat box if you're aware of this. But your brain actually needs auditory stimuli and to be activated by that to help. It helps to optimize brain health. Actually, those who have experienced hearing loss or if they're not properly using their hearing aids or their hearing aids are not operable, it actually can contribute and accelerate cognitive impairment and dementias. So it can actually shrink without having that auditory stimuli, it can shrink and reassign the auditory cortex. It increases your cognitive load because you're trying to make sense of your environments if you can't hear properly. Again, it also leads to atrophy and it can impact the ability to store memories without the sound. So if you're not already doing it, I'm going to make recommendations that you make sure as part of your annual assessment that you get your hearing checked. And even if it's not every year, it's every 2 years, but an auditory test where you're literally having to push the button or raise your hand when you hear the sound. Okay, not just your provider like, can you hear me? Can you hear me in the room? No, I need the auditory test with the the uh the what's it called? Headsets on to do that. But hearing plays a very important role in that. Now, I understand that some people will experience hearing loss. They may have tinnitus, ringing of the ears. Those are things that can impact your brain health. So if you're experiencing any of those, make sure you go to your provider, because obviously they can better assess your hearing. Maybe there's built up earwax in there. Removing that can be maybe something as minor as that. It might be something a little more in detailed, but nevertheless, let's find out. Sometimes it can be related to some of the medications that you're on that can influence your hearing. But my takeaway here is to optimize brain health, you want to make sure that your hearing is also in its best condition. And that starts with clean patent ears. Now, I'm not, after this, don't just go grab a Q-tip and do this. That's not, a provider, someone look into your ear to actually look at the canal, look at the inner structures of the ear, and then also do some hearing tests with you. And before you even get to the auditory ones, there's a device, and I'm going blank on it. It looks like the letter Y, but it's like a metal thing that you clink. But they can assess your hearing in the office. That would be extremely important. And you'll find out that with better hearing, oftentimes, the recall is better, memories are more solidified, those type of things. And then having a community group, because social isolation can lead to cognitive decline. So as we age, we lose some of our friends, our loved ones, people have moved away, and we can sometimes be in isolation. And even during the pandemic, we were in social isolation. So some things we can control, some things we can't. But when we have the opportunity, it's very helpful that we don't sit with our loneliness and just kind of like, well, I don't want to be a burden to anyone. And this is the time where for your health, it's very important that you engage in some type of activity. Now, if you're not a people person, there might be other meaningful ways to connect and find community. Maybe you could do some volunteering time, right? Whether you're working with the center and working with someone face to face, or maybe like, you know what, I want to volunteer, but I like gardening. Let me take care of the plant beds, and I'll do that. But something that helps to instill and remind us of purpose. Faith communities, there's clubs and classes. We have the Soul Steppers here in Los Angeles where we get together and we do activities and exercises together. Reconnect with family. If you haven't already, reconnect with some families, maybe even some estranged family members, right? Just connect, even if it's once a month, but opening up those communication channels, because you're not alone. Sometimes it feels like we're alone and we feel like no one understands us. But I think if we reached out a little bit more, we might see that some people are experiencing the exact same things that we're experiencing. And so you find your tribe. And then even community activities, really important. Even if you don't know someone, if there's an event, if there's what do you call those every Sunday, the farmers market. Even if you go out and walk through the farmers market and kind of just, engage in some activities with others, other people around, even if you're people watching, something that can help stimulate the brain in many ways. Sight, hearing, conversation with other people. These are things that can help keep the brain stimulated. Keep learning, keep growing. So those puzzles, those word games, learning a new language, music, playing the piano, those are all things that can be challenging to the brain. If you think of like weightlifting and exercising for the muscles, what kind of activities can I do to keep the brain um, sharp? So we talked about exercise to keep actually the tissue of the brain, the structure is big, but the neurons that are firing, how do I keep those sharp? Well, that would be these activities. And learning technology. Now, listen, I asked my sons to help me with a lot of stuff, but I'm learning. So, you don't have to know every single thing there is about all this AI technology and all these new apps, but find one that you enjoy and then, use that because that stimulation actually helps to generate new neural pathways in your brain to help keep you sharp, to help find pathways. So as we age, some things will just be naturally aging. We might have high blood pressure or cholesterol or other things that are affecting our vascular. So, how do I have a backup plan? Well, my backup plan is to create those new neural pathways. So, keeping my brain sharp by doing activities. Curiosity is a brain health superpower. So, be curious, ask questions. Try to figure out figure out some things. Those puzzles, those challenges are actually helpful for the brain. Hormones can also impact brain health. So that's something that we need to be mindful of. And as we age, whether it's testosterone, whether it's estrogen, don't what that's one of the things that goes under the radar. So if you feel like, what, I'm feeling a little more forgetful. We're talking about a few things. When you go to your annual physical, ask your provider to run a hormone panel just to see how those are doing because those might be in a situation, those might be off just a little bit, or maybe they're still not in a normal range, but on the lower end. But nevertheless, when we're concerned about anything about the brain, cognition, memory, we need to do our due diligence and look at all the things, lifestyles, labs, hormones, those type of things, because those can contribute to mood fluctuations, sleep disruption, can impact our energy level, like low testosterone. And we all have testosterone, by the way. Low testosterone levels can really affect our mood, our libido, those type of things, energy levels, and even focus, and it can contribute to focus and brain fog. So those are some things that might be going on with the brain as well. Chronic conditions, we've kind of talked about that already. It's really important that you go for your annual physicals at minimum, more frequently. I'm never going to say you're going too much. We'll let your provider tell you if like, okay, you're doing fine, you don't need to come back. But getting evaluated, is your blood pressure being managed well? Your diabetes? How am I doing with weight? And it's not about weight for vanity reasons, but weight because it also having excess weight can also make it challenging for other parts of the body and our health. But there's also some inflammation and metabolic changes that can affect our brain structure as well. And then if you're someone who's had a stroke or have heart disease, that kind of heart disease kind of we can have some narrowing in our coronary arteries, or maybe the heart's deconditioned or a little bit weakened, so that can impact the pump of blood to our brain. If you're someone who's had a stroke, there might be parts of our brain that are impacted, because stroke can sometimes, when there's damage to brains, to some of the brain cells, um, some of that is not reversible. So if there are conditions that can affect overall brain health and your cognition, and memory and things moving forward. So talk to your healthcare provider about if any of these things could be impacting your brain health. And again, talk to your doctor also about medications. There are certain medications that can affect your cognition. Sleep aids, antihistamines, certain blood pressure medications, relaxants. Those, they help with one thing, but then they kind of have a little bit of a side effect. It can make you sleepy, groggy, less attentive. So those type of things they're needed for certain reasons, but we just need to balance out and to make sure that we're not doing more harm than good overall. When we're looking at our brain, some of these medications may just be warranted for a short period of time and not for long-term use. But ask your doctor and or your pharmacy, I'd ask for both of them to do it, to do a review of your medications to say, is there anything on here that can affect my brain health? I'm really interested in knowing, because there might need to be some adjustments there. And then avoiding medication over or misuse. When you're prescribed a medication, your doctor or nurse practitioner generally give you a dose. Please don't start self-dosing, changing your dose without talking to your provider, especially if you're taking other medications. It's really important because those that increases the probability of perhaps you're self-dosing, like, what, I took this and it really helped put me to sleep, so let me take two instead. That can actually be very harmful, make you more drowsy, impact your cognition, and put you at risk for injury or falls or things like that. And definitely not shouldn't be driving in those type of situations. But talk to your provider about how your medications could be impacting your brain health. Now, when do I go to see a doctor for my brain health? Well, anytime is a good time. You don't have to wait for something to be wrong to ask that, because I think a best offense is an even better defense, right? So if you stay ahead of that, that's one thing. But if you or someone are having any of these things, might be time to seek some help, right? Let's ask a couple questions or at least get evaluated. If they're having significant memory changes, so they're forgetting recently learned informations repeatedly, once, twice, or even a few times, because you have to think about this. Well, is what you're expecting me to remember even meaningful for me? Because that's something. And we have to assess like what else was going on in the scenario. But if they're asking the same question about the same thing over an extended period of time, like, okay, you've asked me what door Where if you've asked me several times where are the dog leashes, and it's something that's like, okay, he's asked me that like every day for like the last month or last week or so. Like, is there something going on? That's all. Is there something going on? I think that's probably the best way to approach this, to see if there is something. Um, if someone's getting confused about times or places, especially in familiar and especially if it's in a familiar environment. So if you're somewhere like you're new for the first time, this is not a familiar place with you, we can understand that. But if they're losing track of dates and seasons, things that they normally should be familiar with, that's something to keep an eye on. Maybe personality changes. Sometimes people, when people will reckon they may not know right away something's going on, but they're like, I'm forgetting something or this doesn't feel right. They can get upset and angry. And so you might see some personality changes. Someone might have difficulty managing daily tasks, like they're not managing their finances anymore. Like they're having problems balancing the books when they were once fine, or they're having problems cooking. They're frequently burning their meals or things like that. And then safety concerns, someone getting lost or driving home takes them longer, they made more wrong turns. Those are things that we get concerned about when it comes to safety. So here's some things that brain what does brain health looks like? What does it look like to be living a healthy living for your brain? We're going to move daily. We need to sleep well. We're going to eat those nutrient-rich foods. Stay connected with people that you know. Try our best to manage the stress, right? Let's reevaluate what's important and what's urgent. Something may be urgent, but may not be important. No is a full sentence to some people. Protect your hearing. Get your hearing evaluated. Also, while you're at your doctor's, making sure that you're controlling your chronic conditions, and then keep learning. Stay curious. Brain health is built one habit at a time. So baby steps. You don't have to do everything that we talked about all at once, but pick one thing and then just get started. Start with one change. Maybe you go for a walk 10 minutes a day. Drink a glass in the morning. You know how I said, have your water with you. But over time, this will build consistency and it'll become a habit. It's something that you don't even have to think twice about. And then pick up another something else to do. And then so you start to stack these healthy behaviors. And then all next thing you know, you have a lifestyle that is sustainable for building a healthy brain and keeping your brain healthy. So here's just kind of an example of some things. It doesn't take much time. Daily walk, 15 minutes a day. Bedtime routine, 60 minutes before you go to bed. Let's start dimming those lights. Let's turn off one or two of these lights here in the house to just create a darker environment. And then it only takes less than 10 minutes to schedule a checkup appointment with your doctor. And listen, it is totally okay to make the appointment and say, you know what, I just want to talk to you about my brain health. I went to this presentation today and Nurse Alice was talking about some things I should be doing. And I want to ask about my medications and bring up to you, I think I might have some hearing aids. Can you look in my ear? Totally okay to do that. I would encourage you to do that. It's an ounce of prevention is so much preferred than, you actually having to experience these things downstream. So I have a list here of questions and happy to share the presentation with you all, and you all will have this on the replay. But here's some questions you might ask your provider about your blood. Are my blood pressure and cholesterol well controlled? Could any of my medications be affecting my memory? Should I have a hearing evaluation? Now I'm gonna tell you the answer is yes. Okay, so just you're asking a question, but you already know the answer. And could sleep apnea be affecting my health? And then what lifestyle changes would most benefit your brain health? You and your provider are partners in crime. So allow them to help you with this. So some key takeaways here, and we're right on time. Sorry if I'm a little short here. But brain health, it's a whole body thing, right? We're talking about keeping the brain healthy, but I got to exercise. I got to move. It's about nutrition, what I'm eating, like so many things. Brain health is a whole body health. The things you do to keep your brain healthy will have trickle down effects to other parts of your body. Your lifestyle habits matter so, so much. So for those like, oh, it's just a little bit of stress. Oh, I didn't get enough, oh, that's okay. I don't need to sleep that much. I'll sleep later. Now that I've shown you the pictures, now that we've talked about it, can you understand how there is a connection between those things that we just kind of put off and what they're literally doing at the cellular level to your brain? Those things are very important, and you are deserving of adequate sleep. We don't want, no, I don't want anyone experiencing chronic stress because of all of the impact that it has. And so, and then also engagement. Engagement matters. Remember, we are trying to stimulate the brain in ways to keep it nice and big. So it doesn't start, there's going to be some atrophy because this is father time, but it actually exacerbates when we don't get enough sleep. We have chronic stress. And, overall, the brain can shrink, but those memory structures, the hippocampi that I showed you, is going to be critical for optimizing your brain. Drinking fluids, healthy, we want healthy blood flow through the brain. So that is any questions that I can answer. Please I'll take some time to answer some questions, and then as well invite you back for our next month's presentation where we're talking about stronger, longer, men's health essentials. So we'll get into more specifics for the guys out there.